Hello and welcome to the 7th of our Growing Care Farming monthly themed webinars. This webinar is going to tell us a bit more about surviving the winter and give us some activities and tips for the cold winter months. So we hope you find it useful and that you enjoy it. I just want to start with a few brief housekeeping points. The webinar is being recorded and it'll be uploaded to the Social Farms and Gardens website in due course. So you can go back and revisit anything that you feel like you've missed. Your details and attendance are private and won't be shared. Attendees are not visible via the video link and will be automatically muted. Any questions can be asked through the questions function in your menu. Normally on the right hand side you'll be able to see a little grey box that says questions on there. So you can type your question in and one of the team will pick it up and ask it on your behalf, or if you wish we can unmute you once the recording's finished to ask your question at the end. Any links in the presentation will be pasted into the chat function, which is normally just below your question box. And you can click on that and have a look in there. We'll be posting any links or anything like that into that as we're going along. So you should be able to see 4 faces on your screens at the moment. I'm Deborah Evans, the Regional Care Farming Manager for Growing Care Farming. I'm going to introduce Sean Clay. Sean, do you want to give us a wave? Sean Clay from Scotswood Community Garden. That's been running for around 25 years in the West End of Newcastle upon Tyne, and it's not a place I'm very familiar with, so I'm very much looking forward to hearing a bit more about it. Sean's been working there since 2016 and runs their adult volunteering programme and community engagement. We've got Noelle Wilson with us as well to support us.
Hello.
Hi, Noelle. She's spent 17 years running a care farm before retiring a couple of years ago, and she's been instrumental in helping to develop the care farming code of practice for us, and she remains one of the assessors for that. So she's also got plenty of experience on the subject that we're going to look at today. You can also see at the moment Sarah Marison. She is our Regional Support Officer and she'll be monitoring the questions that I was just talking about during the webinar, and she'll also lead on the Q&A session at the end. She'll hopefully also be monitoring the chat function, and as I mentioned before, if there's any useful links, she'll pop them into that chat box, so keep an eye on that. If you have got questions as you're going along, do pop them in there and we'll probably pick them up at the end just to sort of so we don't alter the flow as we go. Sarah's going to actually turn her camera off when the presentations start, just so as not to distract, but you will see her again at the end. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Sean now. He's going to tell us a bit more about Scotswood and some of the activities that they do during the difficult winter months. And then we'll come back to Noelle, and she's going to just look at some more of the more specific animal care and craft related activities. And then we'll zip back over to Sean again to look in more detail at the implications of some of these activities due to the dreaded C word. And I'm not talking about Christmas. So Sean, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Great, yeah. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Scotswood Community Garden before we start. So we've been running for 25 years. We have about 2.5 acres of very mixed habitat. We've got woodland, we've got a large mature forest garden, we've got ponds, a wildflower meadow, and lots of veg gardens as well. We have active and very busy adult volunteering program as well as youth work. We do school visits, lots of education, and run courses, and older people's services as well. We run the dementia garden project and elderberries gardening project for people over 55. So there's lots goes on at the garden. What I'm going to look at today is I run the adult volunteering program. We're going to have a look at the jobs that we do through the more cold, difficult winter months when working outside with people can be a bit more of a challenge. But it's also, I like the winter. You know, you have the rush and the great bursting into life of spring and summer and all the hustle and bustle of that time. And slowly, as we get into autumn and winter, hopefully there's time to pause a little bit more reflect, plan, build, mend, maintain, all those things which we never get a chance to do as we're rushing around through those wonderful golden summer months. Yeah, so one of the most important things I find all through the year, but particularly in the winter, is to have a variety of jobs on hand. You need to be able to adapt, obviously, to the weather. Things can change very quickly, and to the people you're working with. So having a good store of sort of physical jobs for those cold days when you need something to really keep you warm. Those wet weather jobs, hopefully if you've got a covered space or indoor area, things that you can do on those difficult wet days. At Scotswood, we work with a wide variety of people with all sorts of abilities, some who need a lot of support, some who aren't very mobile. Where everybody, so when I'm talking about the volunteer team, everybody is a volunteer. We don't differentiate between service users and volunteers, as I know some places do, and that's how the approach that we take at Scotswood. So yeah, the first job, a job we're doing a lot at the moment is bulb planting. Is a great job for this time of year. You can never have too many bulbs. We have a spring meadow at Scotswood, which is full of bursts into colour, full of tulips and alliums and daffodils and crocuses and snowdrops, and just really lifts the spirits in the as we're coming out of winter. You can also do these in pots. It's a great job for people who might need a bit more, a job at a table or a job inside. Even we do what's layered or lasagna planting, some people call it, where you can put your bigger bulbs at the bottom and layer up your daffodils and tulips at the bottom and crocuses on top, snowdrops, and you get a succession through the spring, and it's a really wonderful effect. Can be really effective for those smaller spaces. Now another job which we're doing a lot of at this time of year and through the winter is mulching our fruit trees, our fruit bushes. It's a really important job. Mulching is a great tool. It has lots of benefits. You retain the moisture much better if you have a nice thick mulch around your trees and bushes. Feeds the tree or the bush, and also suppresses the weeds. It's amazing how even just having grass growing around an apple tree, for example, will very much limit the vigor of that tree. So a nice thick mulch around that tree will really help it to grow and thrive. You've got to be careful not to sort of choke the tree too much. You want be able to let the trunk breathe. You don't want, if it's all too close, then you can get molds and stuff growing on the tree. You can use all sorts of materials. We have a big wildflower meadow. You can see in the photo there, which we cut with scythes. So we do a late autumn cut, and all those lovely cuttings we'll use to mulch our fruit trees and bushes. We also put some manure in for, especially our currant bushes. They love a good helping of manure. You can use compost, all sorts of any sort of suitable material. Some people put cardboard down as well as a weed suppressant. It can be effective. Sometimes it can have problems as it breaks down of things blowing around then and making a bit of a mess. But yeah, mulching is a great job for now. We also then spending a lot of time on we have a big veg garden. In the other photo there you can see some of our veg beds at the garden. We manage these in a no dig or minimum tillage system, so that needs a lot of top dressing, especially through the winter. Now is a great time if you've got your beds are empty from the summer, or even if you've got some winter crops in like leeks and kales and stuff, you can still top dress around those. Put a nice good thick layer, a good few inches or more if you have it, of either well rotted manure, compost. We make lots of compost at the garden. Yeah, so that we also now at this time of year you can sow green manures. well, a little bit earlier ideally. We've got most of ours in now. We sow phacelia, field beans, clover. There's all sorts of mixes. You want to avoid your beds sitting bare through the winter and just leaching nutrients. So if you do have beds, space, you can put in your winter onions. You can sow broad beans now, and ideally a little bit earlier as well. But once they get away, then come the spring, you'll get a slightly earlier crop. Obviously, garlic can go in the late autumn as well. And inside, if you're lucky enough to have a polytunnel or a greenhouse, great. Winter's great for all your lovely healthy leaves to keep you fit and healthy through the winter months. You can be sowing spinach, chard, your oriental greens. We grow a lot of miner's lettuce or winter purslane, I think it's called as well. It's a wonderful salad leaf, very high in vitamin C. Moroccan cress, lamb's lettuce, land cress, coriander, all these wonderful winter salads that we can grow if you have a slightly protected space. Yeah, and that brings me on to compost. Now I love talking about compost, so I'll try not to go on for too long. But winter's a great time to sort out all your piles. We make lots of different types of compost at the garden here. You can consolidate those, turn them, cover them. It keeps you warm in those cold winter days. We've got three main types of compost that we make at the garden here. We've got your quick kind of hot compost, which, for your kitchen waste, green waste, grass cuttings, annual weeds, those sorts of things which are going to break down quickly, needs regular turning. Then we have a longer term pile for your perennial weeds, big bulky stuff, brown waste, twigs, leaves, anything that's going to take a little bit longer to break down. So yeah, this time of year we're consolidating that into one big pile, which we call the sausage. So it's quite long and fat, and we then cover that over. We use you can use big black plastic, or we use a big piece of old pond liner that we've got. Just want to make sure the light's completely excluded. We leave that for at least a year untouched, just to rot down. And it makes wonderful compost. So once we've covered over this year's sausage, we'll uncover last year's sausage, and then we spend a lot of time riddling that compost, which is again a great winter activity. The volunteers are always amazed at what comes out. How this pile full of all sorts of different stuff has turned into wonderful, rich, dark compost. It's always it's like alchemy. So yes, we've got all our compost sieves. You can have different grades. We make a really nice fine seed compost out of our sausage, as well as more compost for our beds and for mulching our trees. And we get loads out of that. It keeps us going, and it's a great job riddling for people who are maybe a bit less mobile. We have a gentleman who's visually impaired, and he loves doing the riddling. It's a really good core workout. Yeah, so that's a good job to keep you warm. And we also have a wormery, which in the winter needs a little bit. You have to be really careful not to overfeed them in the winter, but they're great once they get going and established. As well, just as we've learned, don't give them too many lemons or onions. So the worms can be a bit fussy. They don't like citrus. Yeah, so winter's a great time for planting as well, and to move and divide any plants. Through the year, it's great to just have a walk around, observe how things are doing, if they're crowded or are they not thriving in a certain place. And now, when things are dormant, it's a great time to move them around if needs be, or divide perennials that are getting a bit big. You can plant bare root trees at this time. It's a great, much cheaper way to, if you're buying fruit trees or bushes. And working with willow, we've got lots of living willow structures at the garden. We've got a willow dragon. We have lots of willow fences, willow shelters. It's a wonderful material to work with. And in the winter, you can really do a hard prune on your willow. You can, cut all your willow withies for basket making, for wreath making, for all your crafts. You can make willow hurdles as well, which is another really good skill to learn. And we've enjoyed some courses over the years learning how to work with willow and make all the many wonderful things you can do with it. And also, to take cuttings and plant if things need repairing, you can do that in the winter. It's another good winter job. And then pruning, cutting back is another job, great job for the winter. All your fruit trees and bushes, raspberries, doing a general tidy up on your perennials. But it's important not to sort of cut everything back too hard at this time of year. And you want to leave some wild, messy areas through the winter for invertebrates and hedgehogs and things to shelter, and it sort of adds a bit of protection in the spring as well. So you don't want to go cutting back too hard now, and can leave that real big tidy up to the spring. Coppicing as well. We've got lots of hazel trees in the garden which we manage on a 4-year rotation. So coppicing is a really nice job for the winter. And then there's that really important job of tool maintenance for those wet days. If it can't be underestimated how important it is to keep your tools sharp, oiling them, fixing them, repairing things. We recently had a tool sharpening course at the garden for our volunteers and for some of our members who wanted to come and learn about that. And it's a really difficult, skilled thing to learn about, and it was really useful. Keeping all your your secateurs, your shears, your bill hooks, your scythes sharp is really important. And then every winter I like to have a project to keep us going. Some of the other photos, I think the next one, Debbie, if you move it on, that was us last winter. We edged all our veg beds with we got some reclaimed scaffolding boards really cheap. We made new paths in between them and just really smartened up that area, made it much more accessible. And now nobody walks on the beds, they're really defined. The winter before, we were making a new accessible area in the garden for our dementia garden project. So we built meter-high raised beds so people can garden standing up. It's really good to have some kind of, some people really just like to get stuck into some a building project or something like that. So if you have the space, it's amazing how cheap you can get hold of things. We've gone down to local wood yards and got things, with their permission, gone through their skips. It's amazing what you'll find, bits of wood in there. We've edged beds with old decking, all sorts of things you can use. And Woodchip as well is another great job for the winter. I find you can never have too many wheelbarrowing jobs in the winter. Also leaves. Now is a great time. We've been sweeping up the leaves, making a leaf mold. You can make a big cage out of chicken wire, and it rots down beautifully over the year. And yeah, it's just wheelbarrowing around, especially fairly light stuff. Wood chip and leaves is just a really simple but satisfying job that lots of people can do. And yeah, I find so we have contacts with local tree surgeons who through the winter will bring us wood chip for free. They're often, they're really happy to have places that will take their wood chip. We put it on our paths in the forest school area. And yeah, I don't some people put it on their beds. I'm not a big fan of adding wood chip sort of as a mulch or into beds, because once that gets incorporated into your soil, it can be not very beneficial. But for paths and for sort of high use areas, it's great. It's a great material to use. Sorry, I'm rattling through everything. How am I doing for time? I'm nearly nearly there. Just Yeah, another good job we do in the winter is just planning the year, looking at what seeds you want to buy, and it's great to involve your volunteers in that, so people feel, this can be nothing nicer than leafing through a seed catalogue, looking at some different funky veg you might want to have a go at growing. Hardwood cuttings are also really important for this time of year, or as things are dormant. There's all sorts of fruit bushes, or your roses, all sorts of shrubs, climbers that you can take cuttings from. It's a really easy, low maintenance way of propagating lots more plants. Bird feeding as well is a really good, and we've also done courses learning how to identify the birds and making bird feeders, all those sorts of things, and cleaning out polytunnels, greenhouses, any of the, if you're lucky enough to have those indoor spaces, is a great time in the winter to just tidy them up and get rid of all those piles of pots that are sitting around. I'm just going to take a very short run through some of the income generating activities now that we do at the garden. As I'm, I think we managed to generate over £50,000 of our own income last year, and a lot of these activities are good for the winter as well. Obviously, it can depend a bit on your volunteer team at the time and the skills that you have available. We do a lot of apple juicing. And the photos here we do lots of woodwork, craft making in the winter. These are some of the things we make: the little snowmen, we make wood angels and the reindeer. So some of those are really big reindeer. We make the much smaller ones as well. And Christmas tree decorations, the teasel on that one is sprayed with a gold spray and looks really nice. It's amazing what all the things, it's fairly rustic what we do, but it's really nice because people get a chance to learn how to use basic wood tools, saws, drills, sanding. It's very accessible, something you can do undercover, hopefully. And then we have a big winter sort of Christmas festival at the garden. We go to markets and stuff and sell our products, and they're really popular, because we also make lots of apple juice, jams, chutneys, cordials all through the year. But the winter's a good time. We freeze lots of produce, so currants, cherries, wild cherries, crab apples, and we make cordial jellies in the winter, as well as our apple juicing. We do a lot of apple juicing with our hard-working apple press. You can see there in the picture. We've got over 30 apple trees at the garden, so we get tons of apples. But if you don't have lots yourself, we also take in apples from other places. There's always surplus apples around so that people can't use, and it's a great activity. Again, there's really lots of processes to it, and it's very, very accessible for lots of people to be able to do. It's a very sort of tangible rewards there. It's really satisfying. We drink lots of juice as well as then pasteurizing it and bottling it and selling it, and that generates quite a good bit of income. We've got links with a few local sort of delis and shops which will sell our products. Yeah, I think and then yes, courses, which I think that's the biggest source of income for us, is running courses, and then also either for our volunteers or for members of the public who come and pay. And winter's a great time when you're a bit less busy to run those courses. We've recently run courses in food hygiene, pruning fruit trees, grafting fruit trees, compost making, willow structures and making willow hurdles, tool sharpening, making jams and jellies, crafts, identifying trees, green woodwork, so all sorts of things to do. And for some people, for the volunteers, we run accredited courses here with the Open College Network, and so people get a proper qualification, a certificate, and that can be a really positive thing as well. It comes with a bit more work doing the accredited stuff, but it is really worth it as well. Funders can really like that sort of thing as well. Yeah, so I think that's, sorry, I hope I haven't gone on too long.
No,
Been
that's
rattling through
fabulous.
it.
You've
So
rather inspired me to get out into my garden, actually, Sean. I've made me realise that there's no excuse, even during the winter
oh,
months.
there's always loads to do in the winter, yeah. And I like to think of it as a time to pause, but it often doesn't happen like that.
No, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm sure there'll be some questions back at the for you at the end, but I'm going to hand over for now over to Noelle, who is just going to sort of pick up on some of the things which you've covered and take them a bit further and talk about some of the animal care as well. So Noelle, if you let me know if you when you want me to move through the slides.
Okay, Debbie. Yeah,
okay.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Sean. Obviously, some overlaps there, but I come from a slightly different setting where we had animals, so I'll sort of major on those sorts of things. So, if you'd like to move on, Debbie, please. So, I really take the point, Sean, that you made that it's a time to pause, and it gives you time to do things that you just don't have time to do in the summer. And I think particularly at this time with COVID around, there's a great need for us to be very creative on our care farms and our community gardens. So perhaps diverting from some of our more normal activities of farming and horticulture and looking perhaps more at crafts and so on, which you've touched on, Sean. So activities with animals. If you've got a large enough indoor area to be COVID safe, get some animals in. Divide up your barn or your polytunnel or whatever into small pens. So you could perhaps have a litter of weaners in one pen, a couple of ewes in another, and then it's an opportunity to do some activities such as weighing, drawing, photographing, and then when the weather's bad, you can dive back inside and use all that data to make posters. And posters can be done at so many different levels. If you've got people who really struggle with literacy and numeracy, farmers' weeklies and so on are a marvellous source of photographs and information. And most people can cut out bits, and then they can be glued on a big poster by the tutor and popped up on your wall. And we've done things like cuts of meat. This is the one we've got in front of us, but things like points of health. How to care for animals, the sky's the limit on this. And we also did posters about cooking, so we talked about food hygiene. So each participant can choose one aspect of food hygiene, do some research, and then reassemble it into a big poster. Next slide, please, Debbie. Often we don't have time to sort of handle animals a great deal in the summer. So now is a good time to handle your animals, to groom them like they've never been groomed, brush them, powder them, polish their feet, trim feet, and then halter training. That can take a long time. But again, a good individual activity so people can spread out. And this one actually wandered into our kitchen. Normally, yes, outside. But take your young lambs or your goats or whatever for a walk. It's a really good way of getting people to get out and get exercise and walk around the farm or walk around your setting. Next one, please, Debbie. Yeah, touching on crafts, we used to make quite a good killing at Christmas with holly wreaths. Again, it's an activity that gets everybody out, collecting materials, getting to know your farm or your garden, and it doesn't just have to be holly and ivy. There are so many different things in the hedges: old man's beard, ivy. We grew some eucalyptus as a windbreak, and that's ideal for winter wreaths and so on. Okay, next one, Debbie. People are going to be cold, particularly if you are limited to have the usual numbers in your inside areas. So digging holes, moving compost, moving leaves and things are good activity, but also digging holes is very heat generating. So one activity might be to dig a fire pit. and this one shows it lined with blocks. But it doesn't end there, because of course as soon as you light a fire in a fire pit, you get drafts going. So then you go off coppicing and you make your hurdles, and then you can put barriers of hurdles all around your fire pit at a safe distance, and then people can sit and chat, tell stories, and do individual cooking around your fire pit. Next one, Debbie. So this is harvesting willows. We had hazel, but we also had about half an acre of willow, and this is a nurture group. So these children were sort of 8 and 9 years old, but it's a job that quite young children can do. And then, as you said, Sean, there's so many different things that you can do. Next one, Debbie. We're making some little hurdles, I think. Yeah, so miniature hurdles, very good for coordination. And it was quite interesting. We found that a lot of people can't do in, out, and then reverse that on the next row. I don't know whether you found that, Sean, at all with any. Yeah, so it's a really strange one. So I think that's a very, very good activity to do. And then step it up to the big hurdles that you can put round your fire pit. Okay, next one, Debbie. So if you have hazel and you have birch on your farm, you can cut birch brushwood, bundle it up, tie it loosely with baler twine. Everybody's got baler twine. And then you push the handle in and then take some cable ties and tighten them, and you've got your Harry Potter broomsticks, which every kid loves, and we found that we could sell those for quite a silly price, really, at Christmas. I think that's probably me done, Debbie. That was a quick sort of 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, wasn't it? This is a really, really good book, and it tells you all sorts of things that you can do when the weather's bad. I mean, we never get snow now, but all sorts of activities there for snowy times and icy times. And just a really good source book for all sorts of other activities. Okay,
that's really useful. Thanks, Noelle. That's really interesting. I'm always excited to look at fire pits and how I've never actually sort of built one dug one through in the ground like that. So it's always interesting to see where the beginning point is. And I think a lot of the other farms I visited have got pizza ovens as well. I don't know, is that something you built?
We made one of those. Yes, that's quite good. Yeah. Quite a good job.
Again, something I'm always very jealous of when I go and visit these places. I quite fancy having one at home.
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm just going to hand back to Sean, because I think, Sean, are you just going to mention, as we said, some of the implications, obviously, of COVID around all this. So I don't know if you just want to pick up on a couple of things associated with that.
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Noelle. That was great. I really love those mini hurdles. I must have a go at those at the garden. They look really good. I like the idea that children can make them themselves. They look great. Yeah. So I thought it would be just worthwhile. You know, as we're all adapting and struggling in these strange COVID times, just to talk a little bit about how we're adapting at the garden at the moment. And I'd love to hear about how other ideas that people have had and ways that they're adapting, so we can all continue to work safely at the moment, because it's certainly challenging. You know, working outside is great in one way because it's a lot safer, but it has its challenges. You know, warmth, especially in the winter, is a really big thing. So yeah, we've really changed how we work at the moment. People are only outside now. We do have some indoor space at the garden, but people are only coming in to go to the toilet. So yeah, and people have to book in. We're working in much smaller groups now. We ring round on a Monday to book people into the sessions that we're offering that week. And so we're seeing people a lot less. It's much more kind of formal where you have to book in. It has advantages then, where we know who's coming. It's, you know, working in small groups we've found has actually been been really beneficial as well in some ways, because you sort of get to check in more with people in a different way. So yeah, we're maintaining social distancing when working outside. We've got color-coded tools, so to make sure we don't mix. We've got different colored tape around the different tools. We've got wipes if we do need to share them, and masks if we're doing a job, which means we have to be at all closer. When we've also been successful with some funding bids to buy, we haven't put it up yet. It's just come this week, so we're really excited. We've got a large bell tent. So one of these sort of 2 big poles in the middle, and a stove inside, a wood burning stove. So we're going to put that up on one of our meadows and have a nice warm space that some people can go in sort of during the session to warm up, have a nice place to have teas and coffees, because it feels really mean saying to people you can come but you can't come inside. So if we've got somewhere warm for people to go, that'll feel really, really nice. And we also then got funding to provide hot soup for each session. We run, at the moment we're running 2 sessions a day, in the morning and in the afternoon, so we'll have soup as part of that session. Because one of them, as I'm sure we're all aware, the work's really important, but so the social side of things is so important in these settings where we're working. Sitting, chatting, having a cup of tea, breaking bread together. That you sort of form a community in a much more real way with those activities, and people get a lot out of it, especially when we're also isolated at the moment. So we felt we wanted to sort of do as much as we could to preserve those things as part of the session. So even just providing cups of tea and coffee can be a real challenge at the moment. One member of staff has to do that with gloves on, with a mask. We wear a nice pinny, bring that out to everybody sat distanced, and then the soup as well now. So it is a challenge to do it safely, but it is really worthwhile. And we're really glad, because we always would have a weekly lunch together on a Wednesday with most of our volunteers would come to that, with using produce from the garden, and that was something which we kept hearing how much people were missing that. So it's not quite the same having soup in small groups, but at least it's one thing we're able to do. And for those people who aren't able to come, or who are coming less, we're also doing lots of phone support with people, with our volunteers. We're doing food drops for some people who are really isolated. And also we've put together lots of activity packs. Like through the summer, we had windowsill growing kits for people to grow herbs and pea shoots and salads on their windowsill. We've just done we're doing bulb planters at the moment, so people can get a whole kit in a big box at their door, so they can put together some pots and decorate the pots and do their nice layered bulbs in the pots. And these little ways of just keeping links with people at this funny time when we're all so isolated is really important. I realise these won't be suitable for or applicable for all settings at all, but I just thought it's worth sort of sharing a little bit about what we're doing. And one thing we found, particularly at the moment, it's just really useful to have a supply of coats and boots and stuff that people can use. People will turn up in unsuitable clothing, they'll be cold, and so that's been something that we've found really valuable recently as well. Okay, that's me done with that
Great,
section.
thanks, Sean. I think it's really interesting you picking up on the sort of issues about keeping people warm, and it's certainly something I know that there's been some discussion about through our sort of membership, and we've had all sorts of suggestions around it, sort of hot water bottles, and as you say, sort of fire pits, and even one which was a new one on me, and it's called a rocket stove, I think, where you sort of make the stove and then it actually heats up a bench as well, which just sounded absolutely fantastic to me. So and I think as you rightly point out, in these sort of COVID times, it is very difficult for people who are working outside and are vulnerable, that we want to carry on, but keep them safe and keep them warm. So it is a big issue. So thank you both very, very much. Sarah has reappeared, which makes me think that we are on to our questions. Have we got some, Sarah? Has any popped up during the...
Yes, a couple of questions have popped up, so we'll start with those, and if anyone else is sort of thinking about it, they can kind of jot it down while we're talking about these first couple. So the first question was from Helen, who was asking Sean about the wood chip, and she was asking whether you can use any kind of wood chip, or does it have to be specific type?
Oh, we're not too fussy about what we use. I mean, I guess I do ask the tree surgeons when they're dropping it off, kind of what's in there, and I think the only, if it was you or something like that, you'd want to be careful, obviously, because that can be fairly toxic, or laburnum or anything like that. But generally, it comes fairly mixed. I mean, in the winter's great because it tends to be really clean, and there's not sort of lots of green stuff and leaves in there, so you get just really nice clean wood chip. For a while, we were getting wood chip from the local council, and they were actually asking us to pay for it as well, which felt a bit cheeky. And it would come, and it would often have lots of plastic in and stuff. It just wasn't great quality at all. So since the last few years, since I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but we rang some local tree firms, and they were really happy to, they often have a few places they'll drop wood chip off, and if they're near us doing a job, they'll just give us a ring and say, do we want to load? And it's great. Yeah, it's free, and there it works for them as well. They often just want to empty the van and get back to the job. So it's but I don't think you have to to worry too much about the different types of wood.
Okay, Helen's replied to say that's great, thank you. Sarah asked about you've mentioned your bell tent and the hot soup, the funding. Was it a local council that provided that, or could you give us an idea of where that funding came from, please?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not so involved on the funding side of things, but I think that was a power to change bid, which was specifically sort of, there's quite a lot of short-term kind of COVID response pots at the moment, which we've sort of adapted some of what we're doing to fit into those, like the home, the phone support and the home kits and the windowsill growing kits, things like that, have come out of those kind of COVID response stuff, as has this this tent and the soup thing. I'm not sure. So power to change, is that? I'm not sure if that's lottery or I'm not. I should know a bit more about the funding side of things, but I don't. But I'm fairly sure that was a power to change.
Okay, no, that there are a lot of, as you say, a lot of COVID response funding pots out there, and we normally try and highlight a few in the GCF monthly bulletins that come out. Either if they're applicable to the whole of England, or if they're just applicable to certain regions. So if that's something that the attendees are interested in, then definitely have a look at that. But also speak to your local voluntary and community sector support organisation, because often they will have grant bulletins, local ones that you can sign up for, often free, and they sometimes even provide support from dedicated officers who can actually help you. If you're, for example, if you're a community interest company, if you're registered as a charity, you might actually be able to get support from them to write the bids for you if it's something that you don't have any experience of. So I would recommend thinking about that if you feel you would benefit from support. Sorry, back to the questions. Let me just check. So there's a question from Sally Ann about, could you send through the links for the fire pit building and the rocket stove, or could they be shared? Where is best to build the rocket stove?
Yes,
Deborah,
please, I want to know more about this.
Yes, this is something that you mentioned, but I'm not quite sure I understand the concept, to be honest.
Yes, it was something I looked into actually on a filming visit not long ago, and it was something that I think it was some of our our Scottish team had mentioned as well. Obviously, up in Scotland, it gets very, very cold, and I think they shared it. So I'd have to dig it out. I think if you Google rocket stoves, there's some fairly handy American people who've done some sort of quite good sites on websites on that, and there's some stuff on YouTube. It was completely new to me. As far as I can gather, it's a sort of you build it from scratch, and it's sort of do you know them, Noelle? Is this a concept you're
I've come across
with?
them. I think Centre for Alternative Technology has done some work on them. I've seen them demonstrated at various sort of green fairs and things. I'm sure there's plenty online.
Yeah.
And no, I can dig out something on fire pits and send over to you, Debbie, to send out a link.
Yes, and we can certainly share that through the newsletter as well, because it is something which more people have been asking. As I said before, I think this issue about trying to keep people warm. There've been suggestions about sort of getting little hot water bottles and just making sure that they're filled so that when people come to sit down. Just a quick question from me, actually, for both Sean and Noelle. Do you find the sessions as popular over the winter? Do you get the same level of sort of engagement from people wanting to come, or do people go a bit off the boil?
I mean, I'm going back a couple of years now, but I always found that we had lots to do, and we were able to keep the whole group, all groups, thoroughly engaged. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
how about
similarly,
you, Sean?
Yeah, very similar. I think I kind of expected when I started the job that things might sort of quieten off in the winter, but I guess we do get less inquiries about new volunteering, but we tend to retain most of our volunteers all year round. And I think especially now, actually, we're having to turn away people, which we're not able to take on new volunteers at the moment. We're just focusing on working with our existing group, as we just don't, because we're working in such small groups. So yeah, we're getting a lot of interest, and I think people are, we've all sort of felt the power of, or the sort of benefits of working outside, especially this year, and connecting with nature and just connecting with other people. And so the volunteers that we do have are all really keen to come in, and they can see that we're taking it really seriously and working very safely.
I think it could be a real boost for care farming generally, I think, because of this heightened awareness.
I think so. I think there's a real awareness, isn't there, of the benefits of being outside, working outside, and connecting to nature in that way.
No, indeed, and as you so rightly point out, it's that connection to other people as well that I think has been sort of lacking this year. So I think it's very heartening, the amount of people who have wanted to engage with us and who are sort of attending the webinar today, who are obviously sort of very interested in this whole area. So it is reassuring. Sarah, have we got any other questions?
Yeah, we've got a few kind of a mixture of comments and questions around particular themes. So I'm just kind of reading them and trying to digest them. So we've had a couple of comments from, I don't know if it's Helly or Healy, who initially mentioned that he'd been trying to get a vending type machine to get us through the provision of refreshment, and then has followed that up with I think around the soup. Do you consider that as a safe way to provide refreshments? Perhaps he is struggling to get through the kind of risk assessment side of things. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe if you just talk through some of the measures that you're taking when you're sort of making and serving, that might help reassure Sean.
Yeah. So I mean, because we're producing food, we jams, chutneys, jellies to sell. We have a food hygiene rating. We have we're all trained in food hygiene. There's the staff anyway that are doing that, and we sort of risk assess carefully this process. So any food making is done. If there's any, or even the teas and coffees, people wear gloves. They wear a mask. Only one person does the whole process, and then it's served outside. People sit distanced outside to have the drink or have the soup. So we feel that's a safe way to do it. I think for some people it felt, I mean, now I guess now we're in the winter and we're back in a kind of lockdown again. It feels very sensible to be doing this thing. I think through the summer we were still working like that, and to some people it felt we would go a bit over the top, going with masks and gloves, and it's also can be a bit depressing having to use all these disposable gloves and things. But we've recently found some of those what they're sort of cornstarch or something, these gloves, so they're a bit less cost on not using plastic all the time. So yeah, but the vending machines, that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought of that, but I can see how that could work for teas or coffees. But it's just I guess about just making sure that whoever's doing it is taking the necessary precautions.
Yes, yeah, great. Thank you. And that actually linked into another question that came in from Kate around what the regulations are in regard to making and selling your produce, i.e. food hygiene. She said that they've thought about it, but they haven't done it. But they don't actually have a kitchen facility on site. So I guess they would be perhaps doing it within their own homes and then using produce from the site, perhaps. So obviously, as individual members of staff, you can each get a food hygiene training and certification, can't you? But is your venue itself inspected and certificated?
Yes, yeah. So we have a kitchen on site, which is the food hygiene inspector comes out. You get a food hygiene rating and all that sort of stuff. You can do that from your home as well, but then they would have to come and inspect, have a look at your home kitchen as well. I mean, for when we did it on it was a couple of years ago, we've really sort of upscaled what we're doing now in terms of selling, and supplying local businesses and markets and things. For a good few years, we were just doing it fairly low level, and we didn't actually have a food hygiene rating, and we were sort of but I think officially, yes, you should have, and if you're going to make them to sell, then you need to have an inspection and all of those sorts of things, which isn't too bad really, as long as you get certain things in place, and it's not too hard.
I think the thing there is to ask the advice of your environmental health officer before you start anything, and then if they're involved from the beginning, they give you good advice, and then you're off to a good start then.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Noelle. Then we've had a few responses around rocket stoves, actually. So
maybe you should run a webinar on what. I'll have to see if I can find somebody who's built one. We'll run a whole webinar on rocket stoves.
Yeah. So Helen has said, check out the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales. They do courses on pizza oven building and would also know about rocket stoves. And then someone else, Rebecca, has mentioned that she has a rocket stove or grill at home, and they're a great way to cook, grill quickly, or boil water for a kettle, cook soup, or heat up something in general. They have a long tube from the bottom and a keg at the top. The idea is that the fire is fed into a chute at the bottom, and it forces the heat up the pipe quickly to provide the heat. They can then be easily adapted for small heating systems in a shed or cabin area. Thank you. Offshoots at Burnley, Lancashire have a great rocket stove, says Kate. And then let's just have a look what's left. We've had a comment back from Nigel, who is going back to the comment earlier about Woodchip, and he said Woodchip is great for paths, but it needs at least a year's rotting down before you use it as a mulch. As you were saying, Sean, it actually robs the soil of nitrogen as it rots, so probably best to keep it off your beds, I suppose. And we are down to the last couple of comments. Karen says, thank you guys, this was really useful. Have to attend another meeting now, so she's just said goodbye. And Sarah mentioned something about good contact within network colleges or course provider support, but I'm not quite sure what that relates to, actually. It might relate to a previous question she sent. If she can quickly maybe clarify on there, we might be able to answer that for her, or give us some advice before we wrap up. But yes, so if you're still there, Sarah, let us know what you mean or what you're after from us, and we'll try and help. But in the meantime, I think that's it.
No, that's been brilliant. Very interesting. I've certainly learned something today as well. It has to be said from both Noelle and Sean. Very keen to come and visit you, Sean, where you're based. It's a bit of a trek for me, a lot close to Sarah, but a long way for me. But who knows? In one of these days when we're all allowed back out again and things go back to some form of normal, you never know. And I certainly think there's some appetites to look into rocket stoves at some point.
Yes, yeah, I'm going to want to get one of these. They sound great.
Definitely. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to everyone who's joined us today, all the attendees and the questions and the level of interest, and particular thanks to Sean and Noelle for their time and expertise. Hopefully everybody's found it useful as I have anyway. All attendees will receive an automated email a few hours after the webinar with a link to a short feedback survey. So if you could just complete this for us, it helps us keep track of just who's accessing the resources and provide us with opportunities to learn and help us to sort of adapt moving forward. And obviously, if you've got any comments at all of ideas for future webinars, we'd always like to hear from that. It's always nice to be able to sort of respond to need. I mentioned at the beginning the webinar is being recorded, so very soon after we finish, we'll get that uploaded to the website and to our YouTube channel. But do feel free to contact any of us, either Sarah or I. Our contact details are at the beginning, but I'm sure that Sean and Noelle would be happy for you to get in touch. Again, their contact details were at the beginning. And please don't forget to follow Growing Care Farming on Twitter and tag us into any social media posts, because we do really love to hear from everybody. So I think we've actually kept time, done a great job. Thank you all very much, and keep in touch with us. Thanks, Noelle and Sean.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.